What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks onto a talk show expecting a normal interview, only to be ambushed with the most disrespectful questions you've ever heard? It only took 32 seconds for this conversation to spiral into one of the most explosive celebrity meltdowns ever caught on camera. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because we're pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment down below with your thoughts on this outrageous behavior, because what you're about to witness is absolutely insane. So here's what went down. Mel Gibson walked onto The View set that morning thinking he was there to promote his latest project. The audience was excited, the cameras were rolling, and everything seemed normal at first. He shook hands with the hosts, sat down in the guest chair, and smiled for the cameras like he'd done 100 times before on talk shows across the country. But Whoopi Goldberg had other plans. From the very first question, you could feel the tension in the room. Instead of asking about his new movie or his career, Whoopi decided to go in a completely different direction. She leaned forward in her chair with this look on her face, like she was about to drop a bomb. And she did. "So Mel," she started, her voice dripping with attitude, "let's talk about your past. You've made some mistakes, said some things. Do you think you've actually changed? Or are you just here for damage control?" The audience went silent. You could hear a pin drop. This wasn't a question. This was an attack. And everyone in that studio knew it. Mel tried to keep his cool. He shifted in his seat, cleared his throat, and responded as calmly as he could. "Look, I'm here to talk about my work. I've addressed those issues many times before. I've apologized, I've grown, and I've moved forward. I thought we were here to discuss the film." But Whoopi wasn't having it. She cut him off before he could even finish his thought. "Move forward?" she said, raising her eyebrows. "Really? Because a lot of people don't think a simple apology cuts it. A lot of people think you got away with things that would have ended anyone else's career." Now, at this point, Mel's jaw tightened. You could see it on his face. He was trying so hard to stay respectful, to keep things professional, but Whoopi was pushing him hard. "I don't know what you want me to say," Mel replied, his voice steady but firm. "I've done the work. I've made amends with people I've hurt. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to be better every single day. That's all any of us can do." The other hosts sat there, barely saying a word. They just watched as Whoopi kept digging and digging, like she was trying to get a reaction out of him. And honestly, it was uncomfortable to watch. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smirked. "Well, that's convenient, isn't it? You get to say you've changed. You get to keep making millions of dollars, and everyone's just supposed to forget about everything." Mel blinked. He looked genuinely shocked that she would say something like that on live television. "I'm not asking anyone to forget anything," he said quietly, "but I am asking for the same grace that everyone else gets. We all make mistakes. That's part of being human. Some mistakes are bigger than others." Whoopi shot back immediately. "And some people don't deserve grace." That was the moment. That was when everything changed. Mel sat up straighter in his chair. His entire demeanor shifted. He wasn't angry yet, but you could tell he was done playing nice. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice low and controlled. "Are you saying I don't deserve grace? Are you saying I don't deserve forgiveness?" Whoopi didn't back down. If anything, she doubled down. "I'm saying that forgiveness is earned, not given. And I'm not sure you've earned it." The audience gasped. Some people started whispering to each other. This wasn't a normal interview anymore. This was a full-on confrontation, and it was happening live in front of millions of viewers. Mel shook his head slowly, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "This is unbelievable," he muttered. Then, louder, he said, "Who are you to decide whether I've earned forgiveness or not? Who gave you that authority? I'm someone with a platform." Whoopi replied coldly, "And I'm using it to hold people accountable." "Accountable?" Mel repeated, his voice rising now. "You're not holding me accountable. You're attacking me. There's a difference." Whoopi rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes on camera. "Oh, here we go, playing the victim." That was it. That was the breaking point. Mel stood up from his chair. The microphone clipped to his shirt nearly pulled off as he rose to his feet. The audience went completely silent. Everyone was frozen, watching to see what would happen next. "I'm not playing anything," Mel said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I came here in good faith to talk about my work, and you've turned this into a personal attack. I don't have to sit here and take this from you or anyone else." Whoopi stayed seated. but she looked up at him with this smug expression. "So you're just going to run away? That's very mature." Mel pointed at her, his hand trembling. "No, I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to be disrespected on national television by someone who clearly has no interest in having an actual conversation. You want to lecture me about mistakes? Fine, but take a look in the mirror first." The other hosts finally tried to step in. One of them said something like, "Okay, let's all just calm down." But it was too late. The damage was done. Mel unclipped his microphone and placed it on the chair. He didn't throw it. He didn't slam it down. He placed it there carefully, like he was trying so hard to maintain whatever composure he had left. Then he looked directly at Whoopi one more time. "You know what?" he said, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "I've spent years trying to be better, trying to do right by people, trying to learn from my mistakes. And I'll continue to do that. But I won't do it here. Not like this, and definitely not for you." And then he walked off. Just turned around and walked straight off the set. The cameras followed him as he made his way past the crew, past the producers who were trying to stop him, past everyone. He didn't look back. He just kept walking until he disappeared through the exit. The studio was in complete chaos. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. The other hosts looked at each other like they had no idea what to do. And Whoopi? She just sat there with her arms still crossed, acting like nothing had happened. But something had definitely happened. Something big. As soon as Mel left, the producers cut to a commercial break. But the damage was already done. The internet exploded within minutes. People who had been watching live started posting clips, sharing their reactions, taking sides. Some people defended Mel, saying he was ambushed and disrespected. Others defended Whoopi, saying she was just asking tough questions. But here's the thing, when you watch the full footage, when you see the entire exchange from start to finish, it's pretty clear what happened. Mel Gibson walked into that studio ready to have a normal conversation, and Whoopi Goldberg turned it into a trap. She wasn't interested in hearing what he had to say. She wasn't interested in giving him a fair chance. She wanted to embarrass him on live television, and she didn't care how it made her look. Let's break down what actually happened here, because there's a lot to unpack. First of all, the way Whoopi started that interview was completely inappropriate. As a talk show host, your job is to make your guests feel comfortable, to have a real conversation, to let them share their story. It's not your job to ambush them with accusations and personal attacks. And that's exactly what she did. From the very first question, she put Mel on the defensive. She didn't give him a chance to talk about his movie, his craft, his passion. She went straight for the jugular, bringing up his past mistakes like they were the only thing that mattered. And when he tried to respond calmly and respectfully, she cut him off and kept pushing. That's not journalism. That's not holding someone accountable. That's just being cruel. And then, when Mel tried to defend himself, when he tried to explain that he's done the work and grown as a person, Whoopi dismissed him completely. She basically told him that his efforts didn't matter, that his apologies weren't good enough, that he didn't deserve forgiveness. Can you imagine how that must have felt? To sit there and have someone tell you, on live television, that you're not worthy of grace? But here's what really gets me. Whoopi sat there with this attitude like she was morally superior, like she had the right to judge him. She acted entitled, like her opinion was the only one that mattered. And when Mel finally had enough and stood up for himself, she mocked him. She called him immature. She accused him of playing the victim. That's what entitled people do. They attack you. And then when you defend yourself, they act like you're the problem. And the crazy thing is, Mel handled it better than most people would have. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He didn't throw anything or make a scene. He simply said, "I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected." And he left. That takes strength. That takes self-control. Because I'm sure a lot of people in that situation would have completely lost it. But Mel didn't. He kept his dignity, even when Whoopi was trying her best to strip it away from him. Now, let's talk about the aftermath in that studio. Because after Mel walked off, things got even more interesting. The camera stayed on for a few seconds longer than they should have. You could see the producers rushing onto the set, whispering frantically to the hosts. You could see the audience members looking at each other, confused and shocked. And you could see Whoopi, still sitting there, trying to act like everything was fine. One of the other hosts leaned over and whispered something to her. We don't know exactly what was said, but based on Whoopi's reaction, it probably wasn't supportive. She waved her hand dismissively and said something back, but the microphones didn't pick it up. Then they cut to commercial. When the show came back from break, Whoopi addressed what had happened, but not in the way you'd expect. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge that maybe she'd gone too far. Instead, she doubled down. "Well, that was interesting," she said with a little laugh. "I guess some people can't handle tough questions." Tough questions. That's what she called it. Like what she did was normal interviewing and not a full-on attack. The other hosts looked uncomfortable. You could tell they didn't agree with how she was handling it, but none of them spoke up. They just nodded along and tried to move on to the next segment as quickly as possible. But the damage was done. The internet had already made up its mind. Within hours, the clip of Mel walking off had been viewed millions of times. People were posting think pieces, making reaction videos, creating memes. Everyone had an opinion. And the vast majority of people, they were on Mel's side. Comments flooded in from all over the world. People said things like, "Whoopi was completely out of line," and Mel showed incredible restraint, and "I would have walked off too." Even people who weren't necessarily fans of Mel Gibson said that what happened to him was unfair. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are or what you've done in the past. Everyone deserves to be treated with basic respect, and Whoopi didn't give him that. She treated him like he was beneath her, like he was lucky to even be sitting in that chair. She acted like she had the moral high ground, like she was doing the world a favor by calling him out, but all she really did was show everyone watching that she was willing to use her platform to bully someone on live television. And you know what's really ironic? Whoopi has talked before about the importance of forgiveness and second chances. She's defended other celebrities who've made mistakes, saying everyone deserves a chance to grow and learn. But when it came to Mel Gibson, suddenly those values didn't apply. That's called hypocrisy. And people noticed. Let's also talk about the power dynamic here, because that's important. Whoopi wasn't just a host asking questions. She was someone with enormous influence and control in that moment. She had the backing of the entire production team, the support of the audience, the safety of her platform. Mel was alone. He was the guest, the outsider, the one person in that room who didn't have backup, and Whoopi used that power imbalance to her advantage. She knew he couldn't really fight back without looking like the bad guy. She knew that if he got too defensive or too angry, people would use it against him. So she pushed and pushed, thinking he would just sit there and take it. But he didn't. He stood up, spoke his truth, and walked away. And that's what really bothered her, because when someone refuses to be controlled, when they refuse to play the victim, it takes away all the power from the person trying to dominate them. Mel took his power back in that moment, and Whoopi couldn't stand it. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about defending everything Mel Gibson has ever done. Nobody's perfect. We all have things in our past we're not proud of. We've all said things we regret, made choices we wish we could take back. But that's not what this is about. This is about how we treat people who are genuinely trying to do better. This is about whether we believe in forgiveness and growth, or whether we believe people should be punished forever for their mistakes. Whoopi made it very clear where she stands. She doesn't believe Mel deserves forgiveness. She doesn't believe he's done enough to earn it. And she used her platform to publicly shame him for having the audacity to move forward with his life. That's not justice. That's not accountability. That's just cruelty disguised as righteousness. And the saddest part, she probably thought she was doing something noble. She probably thought she was standing up for what's right, using her voice to call out bad behavior. But all she really did was show the world that she's willing to kick someone when they're down, to humiliate them for entertainment, to deny them the very grace she's asked for herself in the past. Because, let's be real, Whoopi's not perfect either. None of us are. We've all done things we're ashamed of. We've all hurt people, intentionally or not. And if we were held to the same standard she held Mel to in that interview, none of us would ever be allowed to move on. But that's the thing about entitled people. They hold others to standards they'd never hold themselves to. They demand perfection from everyone else while making excuses for their own behavior. They act like judges and juries, deciding who deserves compassion and who doesn't. And in that moment, Whoopi decided Mel didn't deserve compassion. She decided he didn't deserve respect. She decided he didn't deserve to be treated like a human being. And Mel, to his credit, didn't beg for her approval. He didn't grovel or plead or try to convince her he was worthy. He simply said, "I don't need this," and walked away. That takes courage, real courage. Because it's hard to walk away from something like that. It's hard to stand up for yourself when someone with power and influence is trying to tear you down. It's hard to maintain your dignity when you're being publicly humiliated. But Mel did it, and that's why so many people respect what he did that day. Let's think about what this moment represents on a larger scale. This wasn't just about one interview or one argument. This was about how we treat people in our society. This was about cancel culture, about second chances, about whether we believe people can really change. Whoopi represented the side that says, no, you can't change. No, your apologies don't matter. No, you don't get to move on. You're defined by your worst moments forever, and nothing you do will ever be enough to redeem yourself. Mel represented the side that says yes. Yes, people can grow. Yes, mistakes don't define you. Yes, you deserve the chance to be better, to do better, to show the world you've learned. And when those two perspectives collided on that stage, it created one of the most explosive moments in talk show history. Because this is something everyone can relate to. We've all been judged unfairly. We've all been held to impossible standards. We've all had someone refuse to see the good in us, no matter how hard we try. And watching Mel stand up and say, "I won't accept this treatment," gave a lot of people hope. It showed them that you don't have to sit there and take it when someone's being cruel to you. You don't have to shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. You can stand tall, speak your truth, and walk away with your head held high. That's powerful. That's inspiring. And that's why this moment resonated with so many people. The conversation that happened on The View that day wasn't really about Mel Gibson at all. It was about all of us. It was about how we want to be treated, how we want to treat others, and what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want to live in a world where people are forever defined by their mistakes? Where forgiveness is conditional and grace is something only certain people deserve? Where powerful people use their platforms to humiliate and belittle those they disagree with? Or do we want to live in a world where people get second chances? Where growth is celebrated and redemption is possible? Where we treat each other with kindness and respect, even when we don't see eye to eye? Whoopi chose the first world. Mel chose the second. And the audience, both in that studio and watching at home, had to decide which side they were on. The overwhelming response showed that most people chose Mel's side. They chose compassion over cruelty. They chose understanding over judgment. They chose to believe that people can change, should be allowed to change, and deserve support as they try to become better versions of themselves. And that's what makes this story so important. It's not just about a celebrity walking off a talk show. It's about the values we hold as a society and the way we treat each other as human beings. Mel Gibson walked onto that stage as a guest. He left as a symbol of dignity in the face of disrespect, strength in the face of cruelty, and hope in the face of judgment. And Whoopi? She revealed herself to be exactly what Mel accused her of being, entitled, self-righteous, unwilling to extend to others the same grace she demands for herself. The cameras captured every second of it. The internet never forgot it. And now, looking back, we can all see it for what it really was. A man trying to move forward with his life, and a woman determined to drag him back into his past. A guest asking for basic respect, and a host refusing to give it. A human being standing up for himself, and an entitled celebrity trying to tear him down. In the end, Mel won, not because he yelled the loudest or fought the hardest, but because he refused to let someone else define his worth. He refused to be a victim. He refused to play the game. He just stood up and walked away. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing you can do.